Okay, so we're going to kick off now. Welcome everyone to our live webinar session, which focuses on UK immigration and protecting your IP, along with some great tips about setting up in London. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. Just letting you know that you are on mute and you cannot turn on your video because we're in the webinar format. So if you want to ask any questions, do feel free to use the chat and the Q&A, and my colleague Karen will be moderating the questions that come through, whether they are directed at our panelists or if they're technical. And if you do want to ask the question, please change your name to rename yourself to name-company so we can identify you. This event's been quite popular with lots of you asking questions on our Eventbrite. So thank you very much for submitting questions. It's helped us to shape our conversation today. And we aim to untangle and clarify pages and pages of UK business immigration policies. That's why we've got Tom on the line here for us today, and how businesses can prepare to set up in London and protect their IP. We're joined by our long-standing commercial partners, Uri Clark and Redfern Legal. Our business partners have years of experience working with our international clients and are experts in the fields of legal aspects of setting up your business in the UK and immigration. And they've worked with many of our international clients. So they're very well experienced and thought of at London and Partners. So I'll just give ourselves a little bit of an introduction. In case you're not aware of London and Partners, London Partners is the trade, investment and promotion agency for London, and we work closely with the Mayor of London office and our business partners to promote London as an attractive place to do business, a city to hold world-class cultural, sporting and business events, promote London universities abroad to students who want to come here and study, and also as a great and memorable place to visit. We're part of a project team supporting business recovery through running these events. We've been running them fortnightly, and they'll soon be going monthly from September. I'm Lisa in the centre photo, and I'm an inward investment manager at London and Partners. My main role is to support international companies who are looking to expand internationally and set up in London for the first time. So if there are any of you on the line who are thinking about expanding to London, please do feel to reach out to us directly. And if it's not me, I'll put you in contact with the right person in the team who can support. I'm also joined by my colleagues, Karen and Alex, and we co-organise these events together, and Karen is moderating questions in the chat. So Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, thanks Lisa. Hi everyone. So I'm Karen Sandu and I head in the financial business services and technology space at London Partners, essentially helping businesses from around the world as they look to set up in London.
And we've also got Alex from our research and insights team. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself briefly as well?
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Alex Waterman. I'm your Business Insights Manager, sitting in the Research and Insights team at London Partners. My main role is to support Karen and Lisa's team, the FTI teams with research requests and other strategic projects.
Thanks, Alex. And now we're going to move on to our commercial partners who've kindly agreed to come up as panelists, on our webinar. We've got Uri Clark, Juliet and Simon. And Juliet, would you like to introduce you both to the participants?
Sure. Thanks so much, Karen and Lisa, for organising this, the recovery series, and inviting us to speak. Good morning, everyone. I am Juliet Uri. I'm a London-based solicitor. I run the legal arm of Uri Clark. I'm joined by my fellow partner, Simon, who runs the commercial corporate side. Uri Clark itself is over 80 years old, begun by my grandfather. We specialise in helping businesses from overseas set up. We're lawyers, accountants, tax advisors, financial advisors, and have a recruitment arm. 130 staff, 2 offices, London and Slough, and we love what we do.
Thank you, Juliet. And Redfern Legal, would you like to introduce yourself, Tom?
Thank you, Lisa. So my name is Tom Redfern. I'm the founder of Redfern Legal. We're based in Covent Garden, which the tourist centre of London, but not so at the moment, although happily it is getting busier, I'm pleased to say. We specialise also in helping people and businesses from overseas come to the UK, primarily from an immigration point of view, helping to get the strategy right for immigration, and then working through other parts of legal business that you might need.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to have you both on the line today. So we're going to kick off with the first start of the session with Uri Clark, and they are going to be presenting and answering some questions on top tips on setting up in London, current trends and opportunities to setting up in London, and protecting your intellectual property and what processes may change post-Brexit. So Julia, I believe we're kicking off the presentation with yourself. So over to you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to whiz through the top tips, as well as obviously seeing what's going on, and then pass over to Simon and then on to Tom. So we're going to cover IP and Tom will kindly cover immigration. I am purely going to do the headlines. I'm happy to chat offline in more detail. We as a business have a wide range of clients, so ranging from kind of institutions through to startups. So hopefully the top tips that we've highlighted will help anyone looking at setting up. So I am going to kick off with our tips. My number one tip is please form a UK entity. So decide what structure you're going to form. Typically people form a UK private company. The setup is very, very simple, can be done entirely digitally and within a few hours. So there's no need for notarization, no need for legalization. There is no legal requirement for a UK director, but having a UK resident director is often helpful in opening a bank account. Do obtain immigration advice as it may impact your corporate structure. Corporation tax is only 20% here in the UK, and we have the largest tax treaty network in the world. So form your entity early. It is much easier to do that, and also that will help your clock ticking for R&D. My next sort of kind of second top tip is really working out how you're going to resource your entity. So are you going to bring people in from overseas? Are you going to hire locally, or a mix of both? In terms of overseas, do consider looking at visas and secondment, so seconding staff from overseas. There are amazing tax reliefs available for people being sent to the UK for less than 2 years that are definitely worth exploring. Then if you're looking at locally hiring, you will need UK employment agreements from the start, and just be aware the employment rights don't really kick in until 2 years service, which is pretty important. The other thing that you need to do for people is ensure that you've got employer's liability insurance, which is a compulsory insurance that you must have if you've got staff in the UK. And then a kind of the additional cost, which people often find helpful to know, is from a base salary point of view. You need to pay on top of that as a business. Our social security, what we call national insurance, is 13.8% on top and 3% for a pension top up. So just be aware of those additional matters. My third tip is please allow time to open a bank account. We are typically suggesting people use the challenger banks like Meridian, who are also a commercial partner. Most of these challenger banks start as e-money, they have an e-money license, and then they progress to obtain a full banking license. They are typically faster and easier to open an account with. And once you're established and you've been trading for a while, if you want to, and if it becomes necessary, you can go to one of the main branded banks and open an account then. My fourth, where people do get in a terrible pickle, you might have spent a fortune producing T's and C's and various agreements overseas and then try and use them here in the UK. You may well be able to, but please make sure you update the clauses on jurisdiction and law. Jurisdiction being the court that a dispute would be heard in, and the law being what law would apply. People get into pickles where they've got different law, different courts, and different countries being applied. So keep it simple. Most likely, if you're operating here, put England and Wales as those requirements. And then my fifth and final top tip is really the amazing R&D tax reliefs that are here. They're the most generous in the the world. Please explore them. When we explain to people, they generally don't believe us. Go and investigate further, come back around, and then believe us. So it's often worth utilising them and looking at it. Plus, there is incredible investment opportunity. There is a lot of money in London and a lot of investment. So please keep your UK setup simple. Do it early. Keep the structure simple, avoid complex. It can be costly and generally outweighs any savings you're going to make. So those are kind of my 5 top tips. I don't know whether anyone has questions, or I shall move on to kind of what we're seeing.
Thank you, Juliet. Definitely good top tips on keep it simple, start early, and speak to advisors on sign up in London, and it should go quite smoothly. I've got a couple of questions here on that. What is key in the early stages of setting up in London?
I think it's getting advice, particularly on structure. So setting up that structure, doing it early. I would not kind of ramble along because it's generally more expensive to kind of pick it up and sort it out.
Definitely. And a lot of our clients ask, do they need to have a UK director to incorporate a UK company?
So it's not a requirement, but it generally helps if you're wanting to open a bank account.
And a lot of clients as well are probably asking yourself and us, should they incorporate as a branch or a limited company?
We would always recommend a limited company. If you incorporate as a branch, you're required to file your overseas accounts on public record in the UK, even if it's not an obligation in your home territory. So particularly Americans run to the hills on that. So we would say limited company.
Okay, and then just one last question on, simple question, but when are the tax years in the UK?
So people get slightly confused on that. So we have a personal tax year, which is very random. It's the 6th of April to the 5th of April. So that is people's personal tax. From a corporate perspective, when you incorporate a company, you can choose your year end. So it coincides with your parent company year end. Typically, it automatically defaults to the date you incorporated, but you can change that at any time. Australian companies typically will do like the 30th of June. American companies will do the 31st of December.
Thank you, Juliet. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, current trends.
So what are we seeing? So the joy of COVID-19, this is basically the new norm. We've been locked down for quite some time. We're now all re-emerging, different countries at different rates. But we've learned a lot, and we've learned that most sectors and businesses can operate despite lockdown. We've all been kind of waiting until the norm returns, as in what it was before. Well, to us, we've definitely concluded this is the normal. To us, we've moved a decade in a few months. We've totally embraced technology, whether you like it or not, we all are. We are working from home, and that's become acceptable. Agile working is here. Video conferencing is the norm. These kind of webinars are the norm. We believe people will travel less for business now, which is probably good for the planet. And businesses now motoring and getting on with things. So many sectors are now beginning to do very well. So to me, the message is onwards, and let's get on with it. Our next kind of fandango that people love to ask, and a favourite topic in the UK, is Brexit. So to me, this is really quite a kind of misnomer from a setup point of view. And when looking to establish here, each country in Europe has its own law and accounting system. So a company has to operate and abide by that whilst they're operating in each of those countries. There's never been a single market for services. So if you're a goods company, Brexit definitely impacts you. You will need a registration in the UK and Europe. But otherwise, if you're purely providing services, it doesn't impact. The only thing, which I know Tom will speak about, is from an immigration point of view. But our advice...
Juliet, sorry, can I just make one comment as well? If you're providing a service that's regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, you may well require registration with one of the European regulators because there hasn't been an agreement on the passporting or whether you'll be able to passport financial services outside of the UK after Brexit. Just to clarify that.
Perfect. No, thank you, Simon. Good point, good point. So look, we suggest you set up where your customers are and where demand is. And typically we find a lot of that is London. I have got office space. So typically we would see most companies setting up, hiring a few salespeople who would be home based. We don't see that changing particularly. Many are looking for a bargain in commercial property. I think you've still got to wait a while. But agile working is here. And I think if people are honest, the general trend is really people want a mix of working from home and working from the office. My fourth tip relates to lending. So the investment market is moving. Money is definitely cheap at the moment. We had various incentives for COVID, but definitely have a look at what's going on. My fifth tip is please do not underestimate the need and advantages of establishing a country that's stable. There are a few places people consider as prime locations and prime cities for setting up, London being one, Dublin, Singapore, and I would have previously said Hong Kong. Our advice is choose where the opportunities are and choose where your customers are. London is stable and there are incredible opportunities. My sixth is really employment law. So we are the most relaxed in the UK compared to the rest of Europe. The key rights don't kick in until 2 years continuous service. A lot of the other European cities and countries are from day one. So don't underestimate that. It's an important consideration. And then my seventh is really large reliefs were rolled out due to COVID. Some industries have obviously been hit by COVID, but others are doing incredibly well. So to us, we didn't think we could work harder pre-COVID, but yeah, we've carried on. So our clients in fintech, medtech, educational tech, bike shops are all doing phenomenally well. And the reliefs that have been introduced by government have really stimulated the economy. My final point is really there are incredible people and talent in London. Languages, international, it's phenomenal. So definitely now is the time to look for those people and hire those people. I think those were really my main things I wanted to highlight. I think the only thing I guess that people get often wrong is more a cultural thing. So as Brits, we are unable to say the word no. So our meaning is if we say that things are interesting, that generally means we're not interested. So please do bear that in mind. And I think that is me, unless anyone has any specific questions.
Yeah, so I think that was a very interesting point on British culture, that if someone says if that's interesting, it normally says they'll think about it and maybe not get back to you. Just one question on this topic. Thanks for covering so many great trends and opportunities that we see in London and helping us do our job of selling London and making it attractive. What's the most common setup you see at the moment?
I would say typically a 2-3 man office set up as a UK private subsidiary. So that is the norm. And with people generally working from home, they then may start looking for office space kind of a year into the mission.
It will be interesting on our next webinar when we discuss the future of workplaces in London and the UK. So we're going to move on here to the last topic that you will be presenting. I think it's Simon will be presenting IP.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Lisa, and good morning, everyone. We, as a commercial and corporate law firm, as one of the areas that we cover, we get asked a lot of questions about intellectual property and what steps you need to take to protect your intellectual property here in the UK, and what might change post-Brexit. So just for the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to focus on those topics. To start with, though, fairly important to define what we mean by intellectual property. So generally, there are 4 different things that we talk about. One are trademarks, i.e. your brands. The second one are patents, i.e. inventions and products that are unique. The third one is copyright, so that's written works, literary works, art, film, web copy, anything along those lines. And then the fourth one are what we call design rights, and that's to do with the shape of objects. So depending on sort of what sector you're operating in, some or all of those might be relevant to you. We get asked a lot of questions about whether the UK is a good place to put your intellectual property, and the short answer to that question is yes, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the registration processes are reasonably straightforward. So for example, you can register a trademark in the UK, and that registration period normally takes up to 4 months, but it's only that period of time because there is essentially a 3-month period during which a trademark before it's registered is published, and other trademark holders that might have similar marks in the same or similar classes could potentially contest your mark. But on the whole, it's if your trademark is unique, it is a fairly smooth process and it's not particularly expensive. The whole process of doing a patent in the UK could take up to 5 years, which is certainly comparable with other jurisdictions. And there are plenty of very, very good patent attorneys around. Of course, one of the drawbacks of doing patents is that you have to disclose a significant amount of information in order to file your patent. So you might inadvertently be giving away intellectual property through the process of filing patents. So we do tend to advise clients to think very, very carefully about whether there is any real benefit in filing patents. And certainly, if you are going to file patents, you need to make sure that you've got sufficient funds to defend any of those alleged breaches of patents. So there's it's one thing to file, but the other is you've got to have a bit of a war chest if somebody happens to challenge you. Just in terms of copyright, there's no registration process for copyright in the UK. It is all protected by legislation, and the Copyright Design and Patent Act is a fairly sort of generous and inventor or creator-friendly piece of legislation. And then in terms of the process to register a design right, that's much, much shorter than the trademark process, and it's only about a month. It only takes you about a month. One of the questions we often get asked, and this is where the UK is slightly different, is in jurisdictions like Australia and the US, you can actually make a registration, or you can register and reserve a trading name. So every company will be incorporated with a certain name, but some companies, for a whole variety of reasons, may choose to trade under a different name. And you can pay to register trading names in jurisdictions like Australia and the US. That same process doesn't apply here in the UK. You either register with the Registrar of Companies a company name, and that is the name you use, or you can use a trading as name, but unless you actually trademark that name, you can't protect it. So one of the things that we will advise all of our clients is that either if you want to use a trading name, then try and register the trading name as the company name, and that way you're free to use it. Or alternatively, if you want to register the company with a particular name but then use a different trading name, then we recommend that you trademark the trading name. Now, of course, I don't have time to go into all the nuances of registering trademarks and what they can and can't cover, but certainly if you have a particular business name that you want to trade under, then we recommend either registration and or trademarking, or in fact, in most cases, both. So what is going to change post-Brexit? One of the big changes is that if you have a well, one of the changes that will occur in January next year is that if you happen to have a trademark registered in the EU and then an equivalent UK trademark, so a separate UK trademark, will be created automatically for you as of the 1st of January. So if you have an EU-wide trademark at the moment, it will cover the UK, but those EU marks after the 1st of January or after the 31st of December this year will no longer be protected in the UK. So the UK's Intellectual Property Office is working with the European Intellectual Property Office to create equivalent marks in the UK. So underscore there is that if you have an EU-wide mark at the moment, then you don't need to do anything because your UK trademark will be created for you automatically as of the 1st of January for no cost. Going forward, if you want to register a trademark in the UK and also register a trademark in Europe, you'll actually need to undertake two processes. So you'll need to go through the registration process in the UK and pay the UK fees, and you'll need to then go through the registration process with the European Intellectual Property Office in Europe post-Brexit. One of the interesting things is that in order to register a European trademark post-Brexit, you will need to have a European-based representative, i.e. somebody other than a UK representative. And we're certainly working with a number of our related, or what we call our firm friends across Europe, to ensure that our clients, where they need to have European representation for trademark purposes, are able to tap into our informal network. So I think that's probably all I want to say for the moment on IP protection. And just to reiterate that the UK in particular is a very friendly jurisdiction for the purpose of holding trademarks, registering trademarks, and indeed protecting or undertaking action to protect those trademarks as well. So I think, Lisa, are there questions? Have any questions been raised so far?
Thank you, Simon. Very interesting points on how to protect your IP in the UK and the EU post Brexit. I wasn't aware that you needed to have an EU representative to do that. So there was one question which is quite popular, is how can businesses protect their IP at research and development stage?
So it depends on what IP you're talking about, but certainly if you're talking about trademarks, we'd suggest even before you start your R&D stage, you register trademarks. But if the question specifically relates to patents, until you actually have a complete invention or a complete product, then it is actually difficult to go through the patent process. So typically what we would advise clients to do is be very, very cautious about who they share information with, and also use non-disclosure agreements, particularly for if there are any participants from some of the jurisdictions in the Southern Hemisphere or indeed India. Non-disclosure agreements are not used nearly as much as they are in the UK and the US, and certainly a simple step that we would recommend that you do to protect yourself to the extent that you can is make sure that where you are sharing information with people who don't owe you a duty of confidentiality, so this doesn't apply to your lawyers or your accountants, but if you're sharing information with a commercial partner and you haven't yet commercialized your product, then just make sure that you've got suitable non-disclosure agreements in place that protect both your information that you share with them and conversely information that they share with you. And if anyone needs any further advice or guidance on that, please feel free to contact us after, because we deal with this all day, every day.
Thank you, Simon and Julia. Great advice on setting up in the UK and protecting your IP, both after you've got a product and even when you're in the research and development stages. So Juliet and Simon will be staying on the line for the second and third part of the session. So if you've got any questions, do feel free to ask them questions on the chat. We're now going to move on to Alex from our Research and Insights team, who's going to present recent analysis on London's mobility in the capital, how robust London businesses have been faced with the pandemic, and investment activity. So over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, just going to take you through some slides covering this is specifically London data about the economic mobility business investment. So firstly, if we look at how is London moving again, and we look at some mobility data that comes from some analysis of Google community mobility data. So this tracks devices and footfall and movement by different activity and location. So retail and recreation in London has seen a slow recovery in footfall. So too have workplaces and transport. So as we went into phase 1 of lockdown, you can see all three of these activities dropped by about 80%, 70 to 80%. Yeah, dropped by about 70 to 80%. And then that's been gradually moving, gradually increasing. Back to normal as we've now reached the most latest data set, which came just at the end of July. So it's running about 50% compared to the baseline. So the baseline is taken as a 2019 average, and I've used a 7-day rolling average to smooth out this curve. So that's gradually getting, still well below what we would see normal, but a lot more than it was seen in phase 1. Next slide. So when you compare that to other activities, I've taken grocery and pharmacies and also parks. So in the orange line, you can see that there was still a significant drop in both of these in phase 1 of lockdown at the beginning of April. So about 30%, so 40% below the baseline level. Grocery has gradually increased in footfall back to around 20% below the kind of normal baseline. On the other side, parks is a location or an activity which has seen a massive increase. So you can see these spikes is usually actually around the hot weather, where you can see people are really starting to use London's parks about 50% more than they would usually. The next slide, please. So onto the business side, London companies fared slightly better than the UK average. And this has mainly been driven by the sector mix of companies we have in London and also this tech focus. So this is some data from the ONS Business Impacts of Coronavirus survey. And looking at, on the left-hand side, there's a graph that shows the percentage of businesses that temporarily closed. Just towards that end of that phase 1 of lockdown, London was around 16% of London businesses compared to 20% of the rest of the UK. A lot of that driven by the fact that London has this high skew of finance, professional services, and also professional, scientific and administrative companies that were able to work from home and still remain operating compared to the rest of the country. And this has gradually narrowed as we've moved towards the latest data set, which is actually almost about a month ago now, but they'll be releasing some more data soon when it's around 6% and 7% of companies in London and the UK temporarily closed. Of those that are still open, still running, both in London and the UK, over half are still running at a reduced turnover. So during that earlier stages of lockdown, this is around 58% for London, 61% for the UK. This actually hasn't reduced that much as we've moved throughout the lockdown period. So actually, London is almost exactly the same at 58%, and then the rest of the UK, this has decreased. So although businesses are up and running and opening, there's still definitely some issues that we're seeing with turnover. Next slide, please. So this is some really interesting data that we've got from Deal Room, which looks at investment. So the number of funding rounds to startups and scale-ups, this is with an HQ in London. This actually started to recover in July. So we've taken this number of funding rounds to these companies by month throughout 2020, and then compared that to the 2019 average. And as you can see at the beginning of the year, before coronavirus really had any impact on UK business, it was running about 2% above average and then going down to 7%. As you can gradually see, as we moved into phase 1 and phase 2 of lockdown, it's running about 20% down to about 30% towards the number of deals that you usually see. So it's a significant decrease, but there's still some deals coming through. A lot of these were deals that were in the pipeline. That might have been in the pipeline before the pandemic hit, and deals were actually completed during these months. But most interestingly, I think, is in July we actually saw quite a significant increase from June in the number of deals. So 67 headquarters of those headquarters in London, and this is moving closer. So 17% those you'd see in the 2019 average. And just to pick up really quickly, a couple of the companies, as further on to Juliet said about some of the sectors that are still doing quite strongly. So Karma Kitchens is one of these businesses that raised 252 million. They operate in the delivery and food delivery space. And another one, Moonbug, got 120 million of early VC funding, and they make animation and digital content. So it's these sectors that are actually remaining quite resilient are those which are receiving significant funding. And that's everything from me.
Thank you, Alex. That was great, especially when you can relate it to your own personal lives of going to parks more and going to doing grocery shopping more and slowly getting back to work. And it's great to see that investment deals are still happening in London. So we're now going to move on to Redfern Legal, who are going to be discussing major changes to the visa system in the UK, effects of Brexit on EU nationals, global talent visa, and the Tier 1 innovator visa, which are all applicable to international businesses or businesses in the UK that recruit from abroad. So Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. So I've waited here very patiently and I'm still here, pleased to say. So first of all, to say that immigration has been quite a sexy topic for the last few years. Obviously, Brexit was a lot about the immigration situation that exists in the UK. And now we have a new bill that is addressing the result of the Brexit referendum. And that is going to mean that there are new rules in place from the 1st of January 2021. The bill has been published, and what the major impact of it will be is EU nationals from the 20 countries, but actually 6 countries, because we do not include Ireland in this, from the 1st of 2021, all EU nationals, with the exception of the Irish, will be subject to the same visa rules as the world. And what that means is that anybody arriving from France, Germany, Poland, Italy, Spain, and the other countries from the 1st of January to live and work in the UK will not be able to do so visa. They will need to apply for a visa. So that is quite a change. The health charge is increasing from £400 a year to £624 a year from the 1st of October, which is quite a big expense. The government is increasing charges for EU nationals wanting to come to the UK. It makes sense to do that sooner rather than later. Costs are going up. The good thing about the new immigration rules are that the government is making the threshold for getting the visa lower, easier to get the visa. So that's a good thing. The way that it's doing that is reducing the skill level that is required to get the visa from highly skilled to skilled, from graduate level to A level. It's reducing the salary level from 30,000 to 25,600 per annum. The advertising requirement is being removed. This has always been a troublesome area for people advising on getting visas to sponsor people to come across. And finally, the number of visas that can be applied in the general category is being removed as well. That's a good thing. Those are things. The ability to intercompany transfer to general category has not been available, is not available at the moment. And that is troublesome, because people who are on intercompany transfer are people who are not allowed to settle in the UK. The good news is from the 1st of January, you will be able to switch from intercompany transfer to the general category. So we can foresee that there will be a lot of people looking to do that.
Hi, Tom. Sorry to interrupt. There's a little bit of a problem with the sound just there towards the end. It might be better to turn off your video if there's a wee bit of a problem with internet connectivity and see if the sound works better. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Is that better?
That's way better, yeah. That's improved it.
Where did you lose me on?
I lost you around the ability to switch from ICT to general category. It was just cutting in and out a little bit.
Okay, thank you. You can apply for settlement when you have a general category visa, but you can't apply for settlement if you have an intercompany transfer visa. But from the 1st of January, you will be able to switch from intercompany transfer to general. To also flag that there is a new NHS and healthcare visa that was introduced yesterday. This is for healthcare professionals who are going to be working in the health care industry. So that's a visa that's meant to be cheaper and quicker for people to work in that sector. The only problem with this, with all these changes, which are great news, is that there is no visa for the low skills. And that means that the people working in the restaurant, hospitality trade, and industries at the moment have no visa to be able to work. Any questions?
So what do you think of these changes as an immigration lawyer? What are your thoughts on these changes?
Well, I'm impressed by the changes. They are still a bit, so there is scope to change, to improve on them still. We think that there is the likelihood that the healthcare visa will be expanded to include skills that are not yet allowed via that, because there are a number of healthcare people in the UK from overseas that need to be able to stay, and their skill levels aren't sufficient at the moment. So I'd like to think that there is still to be made with the bill, but generally speaking, it's good news.
Thank you. And do you think the sponsored license system is going to become popular?
I'm going to talk about that in the second slide. I think there's going to be a massive jump in the number of people wanting sponsor licenses, because effectively, if you are an employer and you employ EU nationals, then 1st of January, you're going to need a sponsor to be able to sponsor nationals to come and work for you in the UK.
Perfect. I think that leads us on to the effects of Brexit on EU nationals.
Indeed. So, as we all know, the UK finally left the EU on the 31st of January 2020, and we are currently negotiating the trade deal. That is due to be concluded by the 31st of December 2020. We are very hopeful that there will be a deal concluded by that date. We don't have anybody suggesting that there's going to be an extension to that date. I personally think there will be an extension to that date. I think that's the date. Government is working on that date. I think the EU are also. So 31st of December 2020, we have a new deal in place for trade for people. And that's why we have the new immigration bill starting from the 1st of January 2021. And that means that EU nationals arriving up to the 31st of December 2020, people who arrive before the 1st of January from the EU have the right to live and work in the UK visa-free, and you have to apply for settled or pre-settled status under the scheme known as the EU Settlement Status Scheme by the 3rd of June 2021. Therefore, an EU national arriving in the UK in January of 2021, and all the rigmarole they have to go through, that they won't have to go through if they arrive before the 30th of December 2020. Clearly, anybody coming from the EU, it should be in their interest to arrive in the UK before the end of 31 December 2020 in order to be able to live and work in the UK visa-free. If you don't, then you're going to have to find a way of getting a work visa like the rest of the world to be able to come and live and work in the UK. The most common way is going to be the sponsor license. Now, a sponsor license can take 3 to 4 months to get. We actually did a world record 8 days from application start to government sponsor license, 8 working days. One the other week because everybody bent over backwards to do it. It's unheard of, but normally it takes 3 to 4 months, and it's after you get the sponsor license that a visa can be applied for. Now, given we are 5 months away from the 31st of December, it makes sense to get moving on this. We know that there are approximately 280,000 sponsor licenses. There is 1% of the companies incorporated approximately have a sponsor license. If that increases to 2%, that is an enormous amount of work for the Home Office. At the moment, as far as we can see, it's quite a quick process. The Home Office is working really quickly to turn these things around, but towards the end of the year, we think it's going to get much, much busier. And given the way human nature is, everybody will leave last minute or too late, and then we'll be into next year and people will say, oh my God, I need to get this person over. What do you mean I need a sponsor license first? So the message is get moving. And you should be doing right to work checks on your EU nationals, because if they do not have EU SS status, 30th of June, they will not have the right to work unless they have a different visa in place.
Mm-hmm.
Their employment probably will have to be terminated.
Definitely, and for the registration process of registering for the EUSS status, has it been working well?
It's worked really well. Yes, it's very simple. It's free of charge. The government is to be congratulated because 3.7 million EU nationals have registered under the scheme already, and there have only been a few rejections.
Well, I do have a lot of friends who have registered for it and they did find it easy enough to go through the process. And we know that employers have a duty to do the right to work checks. Presumably there needs to be a fresh push on this by employers in light of the deadlines mentioned here.
Well, I don't think the press has got hold of this yet, and probably therefore a lot of people have started work on this. But we are certainly have started advising our clients that they need to do right to work, see who has EU national passport or identity card, and therefore who is going to need to get the EU status by the 30th of June. And they need to be getting a push on with that, because as I say, 3 million have already done it. There's going to be a reluctance among some people because either they think they're going to get a rejection or they haven't got round to it and it's not very easy. But they're going to have to get on with it. There's less than 12 months to go.
Thanks, Tom. That's great. And a lot of things I didn't know myself there, taken for granted with my own status. So we're now going to move on to global talent.
Yes, so global talent, I think, is a fantastic visa. I really, really like it. And again, it's a visa that has been working to a reduced level. It had limits on the numbers, but the limits have now been taken off by the Home Office. And we foresee that a lot of, this is for self-employed people, but although you can actually be employed, it's the most flexible of visas to get because you can do whatever you want with it. And furthermore, if you have the talent visa, it's 3 years to settlement, whereas normally it takes 5 years, and the promise visa is 5 years to settlement, but the talent visa is 3 years to settlement. But essentially, if you get endorsed as a global talent in the fields of science, humanities, engineering, medicine, digital technology, if you can get endorsed in one of those fields, then you can easily apply for a visa. Now, the agencies that are the endorsers, government agencies, which is great because the fees associated with applying for the endorsement are relatively small. They're £500. You don't get any marks against you if you fail to get the endorsement. And as I say, if you get the endorsement and the visa, you are free to do anything that you want in the UK. So it's a really, really good visa to get. And we think there's going to be a massive increase in the number of applicants for visa because of EU nationals needing a work visa who want to work for themselves come the 1st of January.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I was just reading through that myself, and we'll be sharing these slides with the participants and everyone who registered via Eventbrite, so that all of these great points that Tom's outlined for global talent and EU nationals will be shared. What do you think of this visa route?
Well, I think it's pretty damn good. I think it's certainly one of the options that we throw out start, even when people are thinking of different visas. We say, to get the reaction. I mean, I had it with somebody in California the other day who said, what's global talent visa? Because they were thinking of a different visa, and because presumably we're talking to friends, but you know, it's there and it's available, and the threshold for getting it used to be called the exceptional talent visa. Now it's called global talent, because I think the words exceptional talent will put people off.
Definitely, you don't really know what exceptional talent is unless it's clearly defined. So there's just a question that's came through live from Wishtree Technologies. I run a digital technology company focused on custom software development. Can she apply for a Tier 1 global talent visa?
Absolutely. We would suggest you speak to us about it, but there's no reason why you can't apply. You may be suitable. There is some good information on the government website about the criteria required to apply. But there is absolutely no reason why, if you run a company focused on custom software development, that'll be technical into the digital endorsement area, I would have thought. So
definitely. And then we've also, thanks for answering. We can pick that up separately. The new visa system, does it mean we will attract more elites and talents but less labourers in this country, like builders, cleaners, etc.? There seems to be a lot for a talent rather than low skilled.
Yes, well, as I said, the whole visa, the strategy is to bring skilled and highly skilled people from overseas to the UK. There is no strategy for low skills other than in the agricultural market, and other than through post-study visa that's coming in from the summer of 2021, which allows students who've completed degrees to stay on for 2 years to do any work. So they'll be able to work for 2 years after that. And there's also the mobile scheme allowing people from certain countries in the Commonwealth, like Canada, New Zealand, Australia, to the age of 31 to come to the UK and work in any job for 2 years. But those are the only ways that those low skills are going to be.
Great. Thank you for answering those questions. It'd be good if we could find a little bit more about what's been done for lower skilled people looking to come to the UK and work. So Tom, would it be okay if you could run quickly through the Tier 1 Innovator Visa? I didn't want to miss this because it is a great visa option for businesses.
Yes. So thanks, Lisa. So this Innovator Visa, along with the Startup Visa, have been in place for over a year. I think it's fair to say that they are still finding their feet. Other people might say that they're a mess. They are finding their feet, and there is some. They replaced the entrepreneur visa that used to be in existence until then, and that was then abolished. There are some aspects to it, namely that you only need £50,000 instead of £200,000 to apply for it. Major stumbling block with it has been the fact that you have your business plan endorsed by an endorsing body. Now, in sharp contrast to the talent visa, the endorsing bodies are private companies, and they all money to endorse you, or you have to join their program like an accelerator. There is a great big list of them. For startup visa, you can do it through university. So that's for people leaving university, you can go and apply for the startup visa. But for the innovator visa, you have to go to one of these endorsing bodies. Now, the good news is that 2 government departments have recently become endorsing bodies. One is the Global Entrepreneur Program. Now, the Global Entrepreneur Program is starting to do endorsements from September. They're going to be running a pilot for people within their program. And hopefully, once that pilot is finished, they will start to roll it out to anybody wanting to get the visa. So at the present time, we are reluctant to recommend the innovator visa because of the stumbling block of the endorsing bodies, but we hope for better news in 2020.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's definitely something that may become more popular when there's more endorsing bodies for this type of visa. So thank you very much, Tom. And the information you provided us with is great. If anyone has any further immigration questions, do feel free to reach out to Tom directly. And I will be sharing the slides so you can look at all the information that has been presented today. Just before we wrap up, Karen, could you please launch the feedback polls?
Yeah, just launched it. So you've got 4 questions. If you just scroll down, please answer as many as possible. So how likely are you to recommend these sessions with our business partners to another business? How helpful did you find this session? How engaging and interactive did you find the format of the session? And finally, what support areas are you most interested in? So people management, sales and marketing, business forecasting and strategy, or raising investment. I'm just going to give you just a bit more time to answer those questions. Okay, I'm going to finish it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you everyone who answered the feedback questions. Are really good for giving us an idea of how the sessions are going and how we can reshape them to make them more engaging and helpful to our audiences. So just letting you know that our next webinar is in 2 weeks' time, and it will be on the future workplace environment. So what to do when you're searching for an office space, what to look for, and how the office fit should look with all the COVID restrictions that will be coming in the workplace with social distancing, etc. And you can also see our London's Global Good Newsroom, which is a fantastic chat that we have on WhatsApp, which gives you good news stories from the London community every 2 to 3 days, just letting you know what's happening, what good business initiatives are going on, and to keep you thinking positively about London. And we've got all of our email addresses here, so you can reach out to us directly if you're looking to set up, if you need legal advice, or if you need immigration advice as well from our partners. And I will be sharing these slides with you all after the session. Thank you very much to our partners, Redfern Legal and Uri Clark, for presenting today on our panel. Really appreciate it. And we will be in touch again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Karen. Thanks,
you.
Alex. Bye.
Take care.